Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, no matter what time zone you are in right now. Welcome back to Sip and Talk. I'm Sunny.
And I am Joe.
Welcome in, Sip and Talkers. Grab your favorite mug, settle in, because today we are going on quite the intellectual journey.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, usually on this show, we really try to avoid getting dragged into, meaningless emotional shouting matches.
Right. That is just not our vibe at all.
Exactly. We like to keep things constructive. But when it comes to logical deconstruction, when we need to take a fundamentally flawed political argument and, put it on the operating table and dissect it with absolute precision, we do not hold back.
Not even a little bit. We take the analytical scalpel right to it.
We really do. And today, we are doing a major logical teardown because we received a really fascinating, urgent, and honestly pretty hardcore email from a listener in Taiwan.
Yeah, that email was intense.
It was. And it's a situation that I think a lot of people navigating complex political landscapes can relate to. But this specific context is just so rich for analysis.
The email really painted a vivid picture of a classic conversational brick wall.
Oh, the hardcore wall.
Right, exactly. Our listener was at a family gathering, the kind where politics inevitably gets brought up over dinner.
Always happens.
Always. And they ran into this wall. An older relative, a traditional Kuomintang or KMT supporter, threw this standard, heavily rehearsed combo argument right at them.
And what was the exact phrasing again?
The exact phrasing was, there is no state of Taiwan. Taiwan is part of China. If you don't like Taiwan, you should leave.
Oof. I mean, that is a heavy combo to get hit with, right between passing the salt and pouring a drink.
It really is. And our listener noticed that this specific rhetoric aligns perfectly, almost word for word, with Beijing's official external propaganda messaging.
Which is wild to hear at a family dinner table.
Completely. So they felt completely stuck and reached out, asking for advice on how to logically handle this kind of confrontation without just, devolving into a screaming match.
Right, because it is such a destructive form of conversational pressure. It's designed to instantly shut down all room for actual discussion. It essentially just corners you.
Exactly. It gives you no way out.
Thinking about it from a Silicon Valley perspective, it's like a massive tech company giving you a completely unreasonable ultimatum.
Oh, I like that analogy.
Yeah, it's like them saying, if you aren't absolutely satisfied with every single change we make to this algorithm, then go use pen and paper.
Right. Delete the app and go live in the woods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a false equivalence. It forces you to either accept their premise entirely or exile yourself from the platform or, in this case, your own home.
Yeah.
So I want to break this down. From a strictly legal, political, and logical standpoint, what exactly is wrong with this leave if you don't like it argument?
Let's unpack the mechanics of it, because it is fundamentally a logical fallacy known as a false dilemma.
Okay, a false dilemma.
Right. What this relative is doing is artificially forcing three completely different, highly complex concepts into one single oversimplified bucket.
Which are what?
They are conflating the legal definition of a national title, the reality of current sovereign jurisdiction, and basic fundamental civic rights.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they are mushing them all together to create this inescapable rhetorical trap.
Okay, so that is our mission for today's deep dive. We are going to provide a complete roadmap for deconstructing the logical contradictions of this specific political rhetoric.
Sounds good.
But we aren't stopping there. We are also going to examine the stark reality of Beijing's current military and economic blind spots. And we are going to explore some hidden, massive systemic flaws within their physical infrastructure that perfectly mirror their political system.
It's going to be a packed deep dive. And before we jump in, just a quick reminder for everyone listening, this show takes no partisan sides. Our goal here is always independent thinking, objective analysis using an international perspective, and relying on factual data to decode complex geopolitical realities.
We just look at the mechanics and the realities on the ground.
Exactly. And as always, any economic data or market trends we discuss are purely for analytical purposes and are not financial advice.
Absolutely. So let's jump right into this identity paradox. Let's break down this Taiwan as part of China argument and the deep emotional crisis that is actually fueling it.
Let's do it.
Because part of me wants to push back a little bit on behalf of the older generation.
Okay, play devil's advocate.
Isn't it somewhat fair for them to have a deep cultural or historical attachment to the concept of China? I mean, to use another tech analogy, it's like a legacy code in our tech stacks.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right, like it was totally foundational once the system was built on it, even if it's considered obsolete in the current architecture. So how do we separate that genuine cultural legacy from modern geopolitics?
That is the perfect question, and it's where the linguistic and diplomatic trap of the word China really snaps shut on people. You have to look at the international reality, specifically the timeline post-1971.
Right, the UN resolution.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When the UN passed Resolution 2758, the international legal definition of the word China shifted permanently.
It changed completely.
It did. In the global arena today, China definitively means the PRC, the People's Republic of China, ruled by the CCP.
So it's no longer this romanticized historical, cultural umbrella term. It is a very specific modern political and legal entity.
Precisely. The UN resolution didn't just swap nameplates. It fundamentally transferred the international recognition of statehood. So when someone in Taiwan stands up and claims internationally that Taiwan is part of China, they might think they're expressing a nostalgic attachment to the Historical Republic of China, the ROC.
But that's not how the world hears it.
Not at all. Internationally, what they're actually doing is essentially volunteering their home to be a vassal state of Beijing.
Which is crazy.
It is. If you go to policy circles in Washington right now and say that, people would be absolutely baffled.
Yeah, Washington would just look at you like you have two heads.
Exactly. They'd think, why on earth is this person willingly handing over their own autonomy to a regime that actively wants to absorb them?
It's a complete disconnect between internal nostalgia and external diplomatic reality. And that brings up the second part of their combo punch, the leave if you don't like it fallacy, which just drives me crazy.
It should drive you crazy because it completely ignores the mechanical function of a democracy.
Right.
In a democratic system, the ultimate, most fundamental right of a citizen is the right to stay right where you are and vote to change the system.
That is the whole point.
Exactly. You have the right to change the laws, to elect new leaders, or even to amend the Constitution. Disagreeing with the current state of affairs or the historical narrative doesn't mean you have to be exiled.
Right. The whole point of the system is that you get to complain and work to fix it. That is a feature, not a bug.
Exactly. If you look at this from our viewpoint, our perspective here in the U.S., the geopolitical reality is very clear. Our One China policy, which is heavily anchored by the Taiwan Relations Act, is strictly about maintaining the status quo.
Right.
It is entirely focused on opposing any unilateral use of force to change that status quo.
Right.
We don't view Taiwan as a subordinate province waiting to be claimed.
And think about the brand power of Taiwan globally today. When we in the U.S., or really anyone in Europe or Japan, think of Taiwan, we aren't thinking about a breakaway province.
Not at all.
We think about the IPS Act. We think about TSMC producing the absolute most advanced semiconductors on the planet. We think of our vital, high-tech global supply chains and a vibrant, noisy, active democracy. That is the global brand.
That brand is incredibly powerful, and it's completely distinct. So for our listener who wrote in, how do you actually handle this at the dinner table?
Yeah, what's the actionable advice here?
We've put together a tactical playbook, a few specific responses you can use to logically dismantle this argument.
Oh, I love a good playbook. Let's get into the strategies.
First up is what we call the passport test.
Passport test, okay.
Next time this relative insists that Taiwan is just part of China, ask them to trace the mechanics of international travel. Ask them, when you travel abroad and fill out a customs form, if you write Republic of China, what actually happens at the border?
Oh, you get flagged.
You get immediately flagged as a PRC citizen by international customs databases.
Because the computers only know the PRC as China.
Exactly. Aviation systems like ICAO run on modern data codes.
Right.
It causes massive administrative headaches. It's actually why Taiwan had to modify its passport design back in 2021.
Oh, right. I remember that redesign.
If you look at the design change, they significantly shrank the English words Republic of China and heavily enlarged the word Taiwan.
And they didn't do that just for fun.
No, they didn't spend millions of dollars redesigning passports just to make a political statement. They did it for pure administrative survival. They did it so their citizens wouldn't get endlessly stuck at border control in Paris or New York while computers tried to figure out which China they belonged to.
That is such a grounded, practical counter-argument. You can't argue with the reality of airport customs software.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the next play in the playbook?
The next one requires a bit more introspection. We call it the soul torture question.
The soul torture question, that sounds intense.
It is a little intense. You have to ask them to really define what it is they are nostalgic for. The China that the older generation misses, that historical, cultural ideal, perhaps the geographic grandeur, it has not existed as a political entity for over 70 years.
Right, it's a ghost.
It is a ghost. The current CCP regime that occupies that land, confiscated private property, heavily restricts free speech, and actively suppresses local dialects and cultures.
Yeah, the reality is grim.
So you ask them, why are you advocating for a political regime that literally considers you, simply by virtue of living in a democratic system, to be a separatist?
Wow. That really forces them to confront the gap between their memory and the current geopolitical reality. You're asking them to reconcile their love for a historical ghost with their defense of a very real, very authoritarian government.
Exactly. You're asking them to look at the mechanics of the system they are defending. And that leads right into the final tactic, the cognitive dissonance check.
Okay, lay it on me.
You simply point out the profound irony of their actions in that very moment. You say, you are using Taiwan's absolute constitutional freedom of speech to sit here and openly, loudly criticize the Taiwanese president and the government.
Which they can do freely.
Right, but then you follow up with, yet you are simultaneously parroting the exact talking points of a regime in Beijing that would literally arrest you for doing the exact same thing to their leaders.
It's the ultimate irony. You are using the shield of democracy to advocate for the sword of authoritarianism.
It is a massive contradiction.
And the really tragic part is that the CCP absolutely loves this internal division. They just sit back and watch.
Oh, they thrive on it.
It acts as completely free cognitive warfare. Beijing doesn't have to spend a dime trying to convince the world that Taiwan is divided because the older generation is doing the work for them at family dinners. It saves Beijing billions in propaganda costs.
It is arguably the most cost-effective information operation in the world. When a society argues itself into a stalemate over its own basic identity, it becomes incredibly vulnerable.
Right.
The internal friction does the work of an external adversary.
But while Beijing loves to exploit these internal democratic debates, and they love to watch the infighting, it begs a much bigger question. What are they actually doing across the strait when they think no one is looking?
Right. What's the physical reality?
Let's look at their physical military preparations, because that paints a very different picture than their diplomatic rhetoric.
This is where things get genuinely surreal. We need to talk about their cognitive warfare operations in Inner Mongolia.
Yes. The satellite imagery. For those who haven't seen this, open a new tab and look this up later. It is crazy. Walk us through what the satellites have actually found out there in the sand.
Over the past few years, commercial and military satellite imagery has revealed an incredibly bizarre and massive construction project deep in the Aoxa League Desert in Inner Mongolia.
In the middle of nowhere.
Literally the middle of nowhere. The CCP has built a highly accurate, full-scale replica of Taipei's Boai Special Zone.
The heart of the government.
Exactly. This is the absolute heart of Taiwan's government. They have recreated the presidential office building and the surrounding district. And we aren't just talking about rough plywood outlines. We are talking about exact street angles.
Like down to the exact intersections that commuters take to work every day.
Yes, it is so detailed, this eerie. It's like a massive multi-million-dollar psychological movie set. But here is the fascinating strategic assumption hidden in this mock-up. There are incredibly important buildings missing.
Right, what they didn't build is just as important as what they did build. They didn't build the executive yuan, which is the cabinet, and they didn't build the legislature. They completely left out the parliament.
They just erased it from the map.
And when you analyze that from a structural standpoint, it reveals their entire military doctrine and their mindset. They genuinely believe that if they execute a rapid decapitation strike on the president, if they just take out the executive head, the rest of the government, especially the legislature, will simply fold and surrender.
A very telling authoritarian projection.
Yes.
They assume a democratic system is as top-heavy and brittle as their own. In their system, if you remove the central node, the whole network collapses. They fail to understand that democratic governance is decentralized.
Right. The parliament would just take over.
Exactly. But we know they're actively refining this decapitation strategy because recently, satellites picked up a new addition to the desert mock-up.
What did they add?
They added a 280-meter underground tunnel complex.
Oh, wow.
This is specifically designed to simulate an attack on the Taiwanese leadership's underground escape routes during a crisis.
But this brings up a huge question. who is the audience for this? Like I said, it's a movie set, but who is it playing for? Because practicing in a desert is one thing, but they know our satellites fly over this daily.
Oh, they absolutely know we can see it.
Right.
They want it to be seen. But the target audience is not the average Taiwanese citizen. The average person in Taipei is busy going to work, eating minced pork rice, and just living their life.
Yeah, they don't care about a desert mock-up.
Even when China throws massive tantrums and does huge live-fire drills, like they did after the Pelosi visit, the average citizen just shrugs and goes about their day. The stock market barely blinks.
So if it's not to scare the general public, who are they spending millions of dollars to intimidate?
It is squarely aimed at the politicians, the lawmakers, and the military brass. It's a highly targeted psychological operation aimed at generating elite defeatism.
Elite defeatism. That is a great phrase.
The message they're trying to send with this desert replica is, look at this. We have practiced this exact strike 1,000 times. We know your streets better than you do. You cannot possibly win.
Don't even try.
Exactly. When the time comes, don't even try to fight. Just take your money and flee to the US or Europe. It is designed to plant a very specific seed of hopelessness in the leadership.
That is so insidious. It's meant to make the leadership feel utterly paralyzed before a single shot is even fired. But it's not just Taiwanese targets in the desert, right?
Right.
This connects directly to our geopolitical reality and U.S. involvement.
Exactly. The Taipei mock-up gets all the headlines. But further out in the desert, they have also built incredibly detailed replicas of naval bases.
Okay, which ones?
They built a mock-up of the Swao Naval Base, which is a critical deep-water port on Taiwan's east coast. But even more tellingly, they built a replica of the U.S. Yokosuka Naval Base in Japan.
Wait, our base, which is the headquarters of our U.S. 7th Fleet.
Right. And this exposes a massive irony in their propaganda. On one hand, CCP information operations are constantly pushing U.S. skepticism inside Taiwan.
Right. They fund narratives saying, America won't help you, America is going to abandon you, you are on your own.
Exactly. Yet out in the desert, their own military is spending vast resources actively practicing coordinated missile strikes against U.S. bases in Japan.
Which proves that behind closed doors, their military planners fully expect our military to intervene.
Absolutely.
I mean, they wouldn't be dedicating finite defense budget resources to practicing hitting Yokosuka if they actually believed their own propaganda that America would just sit this one out.
Exactly. Their physical kinetic preparations completely contradict their psychological operations.
But let me push back on the military reality of this for a second. Practicing missile strikes and infantry movements in a bone-dry, static desert environment is a little bit different than trying to cross 100 kilometers of the world's most unpredictable ocean, right?
Oh, it's the difference between playing a video game on easy mode and trying to do it in real life while someone is throwing rocks at you.
Exactly.
An amphibious assault across the Taiwan Strait would mechanically be the most complex military operation in human history. We are talking about navigating 100 kilometers of highly volatile water. The strait is notorious for sudden typhoons, extreme currents, and rogue waves that can capsize landing craft.
And even if you make it across the water, it's not like the beaches are welcoming.
Not at all. Taiwan has incredibly few viable landing beaches, what the military calls red beaches. Most of the coast is sheer cliffs or dense urban environments.
So you have a massive bottleneck.
A huge one. The beaches that do exist are heavily fortified, mined, and pre-sighted by artillery. To pretend that successfully raiding a plywood mock-up in the flat, dry Alca Desert translates to successfully moving hundreds of thousands of troops, heavy armor, and logistical supplies across a hostile ocean while under constant fire from anti-ship missiles.
It's a joke.
Yeah, it's a massive leap of logic.
Yeah. So building desert models and filming drone videos is one thing. But actually executing a modern multi-domain war requires an absolutely endless supply of money.
Nothing burns cash like a war.
Right. Wars burn through cash faster than anything else on Earth. So let's open Beijing's wallet and see what's actually inside right now. Because the economic picture is shifting drastically.
It really is. And the disconnect between their military ambitions and their severe domestic economic crises is becoming impossible to ignore.
Where do we even start?
Well, if you want to understand the real state of the Chinese economy, you have to look past the top-line, heavily massaged GDP numbers they publish. You have to look at what local officials are accidentally admitting in municipal meetings.
Yes. Let's talk about the alarm bells ringing in Changshan. This was a fascinating incident that really peeled back the curtain.
Right. So Changshan is a massive city, a major automotive manufacturing hub in the Northeast. In official lore, it's often referred to as the eldest son of the Republic because of its historical industrial importance.
Right, they build everything.
They build everything from train cars to traditional combustion engine vehicles. Recently, the CCP Secretary of Changshun held a major meeting and released a highly unusual official statement. He used a very specific phrase to describe their economic situation.
What was the phrase?
He called it unprecedented difficulties and challenges.
Now, to an American ear, unprecedented challenges just sounds like standard political speech. A mayor here might say that about, pothole repair budgets or snow removal, but in the CCP system, words are strictly controlled.
Exactly. In the highly curated, heavily censored language of the official state apparatus, where everything is always steadily improving and moving towards glorious victory, a high-ranking official using the word unprecedented to describe a difficulty is a nuclear-level admission of failure.
It's massive.
It means the mechanical reality of the situation is so bad they can no longer hide it behind standard bureaucratic jargon.
And the stats back up that panic. We are looking at a 20% plummet in profits for large enterprises in that region.
Just a total nosedive.
And the traditional combustion engine market, which they relied on for tax revenue and employment, is basically dying. And while they pivoted hard to EVs, the electric vehicle market is currently locked in this cutthroat, margin-destroying price war. Companies are bleeding cash just to maintain market share.
And this touches on a vital mechanical flaw in their economy. Local municipalities in China rely heavily on corporate taxes from these massive state-owned enterprises and on land sales to those companies to fund their own municipal debt.
So when the companies hurt, the government hurts.
Exactly. When the auto margins collapse in a price war, the tax revenue evaporates, and the local government literally cannot pay its bills. And you know what happened to that official statement about the unprecedented difficulties?
Oh, let me guess. It miraculously vanished from the internet.
You guessed it. Shortly after it was posted, it was abruptly deleted from the government website, scrubbed completely from the public record.
Because you can't have a local official admitting the ship is taking on water while the captain is telling everyone they are flying to the moon.
Right.
It's the sheer predictability of the censorship that always gets me.
But the structural problem for Beijing is that you can delete a web post, but you can't delete a municipal deficit.
True.
And it is not just the Rust Belt industrial cities like Changshun that are struggling. If you look at the broader economic picture, the traditionally wealthy powerhouse provinces,
like Shanghai.
Yeah, places like Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Guangdong, provinces that usually act as the financial engine to subsidize the poorer regions of the country. They are facing severe financial deficits in the first half of this year. The economic engine isn't just sputtering, it's stalling.
So this brings up a massive strategic question. If the economic engine is stalling out, if the wallet is getting empty, does that make a conflict more likely because they need a massive nationalist distraction?
Really?
Or does it make it less likely because they literally can't afford the burn rate of a modern war?
That is the trillion-dollar debate in Washington right now. We know the CIA has publicly stated that Xi Jinping has ordered the PLA to be capable of taking Taiwan by 2027.
Right, the 2027 timeline.
That's the timeline for capability. But capability on paper is very different from capability in reality.
Especially when you look at what has been happening inside the PLA recently.
Right. You have to contrast this ambitious 2027 timeline with the massive, sweeping internal corruption purges we've seen over the last year.
The purges have been wild.
They completely decapitated the leadership of the rocket force, the very people who would be responsible for launching the initial strikes in any conflict.
And the reasons why were insane.
We are talking about missing equipment budgets, reports of missile silos with defective lids, and missiles being filled with water instead of fuel because the procurement money was skimmed off.
Missiles filled with water. You cannot execute a highly coordinated, multi-domain amphibious invasion if your commanders are terrified of being purged and your missiles physically do not have fuel.
And it goes deeper than just financial corruption. It's the actual organizational structure of the military. The PLA system is rigidly top-down. Mechanically, it is designed, first and foremost, to prevent internal military coups against the leadership.
It's all about control.
Exactly. It is not designed for agile, decentralized warfare. All decisions, even basic tactical ones, have to flow all the way up to the very top and back down.
That sounds terribly inefficient in a war zone.
It is. That total lack of battlefield autonomy makes executing something as fluid and chaotic as an amphibious invasion incredibly risky. If communication gets jammed, the local commanders literally do not have the structural authority to adapt to changing conditions on the beach.
It is a system built on total control, which ironically makes it incredibly brittle in a chaotic environment.
Precisely.
And speaking of massive systemic flaws hidden behind a facade of absolute strength and control, there is no greater physical metaphor for the CCP's current state than the Three Gorges Dam.
Oh man, the concrete leviathan itself.
Every single year, without fail, during the summer flood season, rumors start swirling across the internet that the Three Gorges Dam is going to collapse.
It's like clockwork.
It really is. It's become this annual cycle of panic and state media reassurance. I want us to strip away the wild internet rumors and look at the sheer physics of this structure and the political reality behind it.
It's a fascinating subject because it sits right at the intersection of extreme engineering, military vulnerability, and deep systemic corruption.
Yeah.
Let's start with the doomsday physics. What actually happens mechanically if this thing fails?
Let's run the timeline because the sheer volume of water we are talking about is hard to comprehend. It's tens of billions of cubic meters of water held back by this wall.
If we make a completely extreme assumption, say a catastrophic, instantaneous structural failure where the dam simply gives way.
It totally vanishes.
Right, the timeline is apocalyptic. The water wouldn't just flow, it would explode outward with kinetic fury. About 38 kilometers downstream is the Gazuba Dam. That would be completely wiped out in about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
It wouldn't even act as a speed bump against that volume of water.
And then it hits the first major population center.
Right. Yuchang, a city 40 kilometers away, would be hit in roughly 20 minutes. And it wouldn't be a flood like we think of a river rising. It would be a 30-meter wall of water.
30 meters! That is 10 stories high!
Yes, traveling at incredible speed. You wouldn't have time to find your car keys, let alone evacuate. The city would simply be erased from the map.
And as it moves out of the gorges and hits the plains?
Once it hits the open Hanjiang Plain, the energy dissipates a bit as it widens out and slows down, but it's still catastrophic.
Yeah.
Jingzhou and Yuyang would be hit in about 5 to 6 hours by a wall of water 5 to 8 meters high.
Still massive.
Very massive. And within 24 hours, this massive surge reaches Wuhan. Wuhan wouldn't see a 30-meter wave, but it would see several meters of sustained rushing water. It would turn a massive metropolis into an aquarium in a single day.
Unbelievable.
And the surge would continue all the way down the Yangtze, reaching Shanghai in the ocean in about a week. Millions of lives and a massive chunk of China's economic output would be devastated.
Okay, so that is the worst-case instantaneous failure scenario. Because of that apocalyptic potential, it naturally brings up the military threat. If you are a military planner looking at China, that dam is a giant bullseye.
Oh, absolutely.
There is a constant debate on defense forums. Can a missile take it out?
And this is where we have to separate movie logic from physics. A lot of people think you just shoot a conventional Tomahawk missile at it and it crumbles.
Right, like the Death Star.
Exactly. But that is not how a gravity dam works. You have to think of it like those concrete Jersey barriers you see on the highway, the ones designed to stop a speeding truck. The Three Gorges Dam is essentially a Jersey barrier, but it is 140 times the size and 2.7 million times heavier.
It's just pure mass.
Pure mass. It relies entirely on its own unimaginable mass pressing down on bedrock to hold the water back.
So a conventional explosive just dents it.
Barely even that.
Yeah.
To physically flip or shatter the main structure of a gravity dam that massive, physics dictates you would need a kinetic impact equivalent to a 100 million ton ice meteor traveling at 920 kilometers per hour.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that yields about 50,000 tons of TNT force, focused perfectly on the structure. No conventional missile on Earth can deliver that kind of kinetic shock.
So if conventional missiles can't do it, what is the actual military vulnerability? Because it's not invincible.
It's not invincible to modern nuclear weapons. The real threat to the structure itself would be a modern tactical nuke, say something with a 250,000-ton TNT yield.
Okay, that makes sense.
And the key is how it's deployed. If you drop it into the deep water of the reservoir right behind the dam, you utilize what's called the water hammer effect. Because water cannot be compressed, an underwater explosion transfers almost all its concussive energy directly into the concrete.
Wow.
It essentially multiplies the destructive force 4 times over. That would shatter the dam.
But practically speaking, in a conventional war, nobody is going to drop a nuke just to break a dam. It crosses the nuclear threshold. But there is a much more realistic tactical reality here.
Right.
An enemy wouldn't actually need to vaporize 1 million tons of concrete to neutralize the dam as a threat, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't aim for the thickest part of the concrete. You aim for the moving parts.
The infrastructure.
A military would just drop precision bunker busters on the generator rooms, the control centers, and the massive steel floodgates. If you paralyze the mechanical flood control system during peak summer rain season, the reservoir will naturally overfill.
And that creates a horrifying political dilemma for Beijing.
It puts them in an impossible checkmate. If the gates are jammed shut by a strike, the water rises. The authorities would have to choose between letting the water overtop the dam, which would eventually undermine the foundation and cause a catastrophic collapse,
Or
they would have to intentionally dynamite their own auxiliary spillways to flood their own downstream cities just to save the main structure.
it weaponizes their own geography against them. But honestly, even without a military strike, the political dilemma of the dam is already playing out every single year.
And it really is.
Why does the Yangtze River Basin still experience catastrophic flooding every summer, despite having built this quote-unquote miracle dam that was supposed to solve the problem forever?
This comes down to the bureaucratic survival instinct embedded in authoritarian systems.
Right.
The dam serves multiple purposes: power generation and flood control. But politically, the most important thing is that the dam itself never fails, because it is the ultimate symbol of the party's engineering prowess.
So how does that play out when the heavy rains come?
When the water levels in the reservoir rise dangerously close to the maximum capacity, the local officials and dam operators are faced with a choice. If they hold the water back to protect the downstream cities, they risk the dam's structural integrity.
And if the dam breaks?
If the dam cracks on their watch, they don't just lose their jobs, they might face severe life-altering punishment.
The ultimate bureaucratic nightmare.
Right. So their survival instinct dictates that they will always choose to open the floodgates. They will intentionally flood the downstream farmland, villages, and sometimes even cities because they can rebrand that.
They rebrand a flood.
They call the downstream flooding a natural disaster caused by unseasonable rainfall. They can send in the army, pose for heroic rescue photos in rubber boats, and control the media narrative.
Wow.
They cannot control the narrative if the dam itself breaks.
It is entirely about protecting the system and the officials rather than protecting the people the system was supposedly built for. And you can track this in their own propaganda over the years. It's darkly hilarious if it wasn't so tragic.
Oh, the changing slogans?
Yes. When they were building it, they claimed it could withstand a 10,000-year flood. Then, a few years later, the official messaging quietly downgraded it to a 1,000-year flood.
For them.
Then it became a 100-year flood. And recently, the official line has shifted to citizens should not rely entirely on the dam for flood protection.
The shifting goalposts are a clear indicator that structural reality is catching up with the propaganda.
Which leads us to the black box of the construction itself, because we know that the 1990s and early 2000s in China were absolutely notorious for what they call tofu dreg projects.
Buildings and bridges that collapsed because contractors skimmed the money and used garbage materials.
Right. Did the most important high-profile dam in the world suffer the same fate?
The short answer is yes, and they tried desperately to hide it. We know this because of a major inspection in 1999 led by Qian Zhengying, a highly respected water resources expert. Her team went in, and what they found was terrifying.
What did they find?
They found massive, hidden structural cracks throughout the concrete.
How does that even happen on a project with that much oversight?
Because the political mandate to finish on a specific, accelerated timeline was more important than the chemistry of engineering safety. When you pour concrete on that massive of a scale, it generates immense thermal heat as it cures. If you pour it too fast, without proper cooling systems, the temperature differential causes massive thermal cracking. Furthermore, contractors were using substandard mud-filled gravel in the concrete mix to cut costs.
So you have the largest dam in the world holding back an inland ocean, and it's full of thermal cracks. How did they fix it? Because they obviously didn't tear it down.
No, tearing it down would have been a political disaster of epic proportions. So they used a Band-Aid. They had to forcefully pump thousands upon thousands of tons of a chemical epoxy resin, essentially an industrial superglue, deep into the cracks of the dam.
You are kidding me.
No. So today, the core structure of the dam isn't just solid concrete. It is heavily patched with chemical glue.
It's held together by epoxy and a prayer.
And because it was this supreme political vanity project pushed by the very top leadership, it can never, ever be allowed to fail. So the government now quietly funnels billions and billions of taxpayer money into a bottomless pit of perpetual high-priced maintenance.
Just to keep it standing.
They are constantly monitoring, patching, and reinforcing it, far beyond what a properly built dam would require, just to hide the original flaws.
It's a sunk cost fallacy on a national scale, but this brings up the ultimate danger, the thing that I think really terrifies people living downstream. If the dam is actually failing, if the epoxy gives way or the water pressure gets too high, will the public actually be warned in time?
If we look at the historical behavior of authoritarian regimes, the answer is a chilling no. The bureaucratic instinct is never to cause a panic that makes the government look weak. The first reaction is always to suppress the information and try to fix it secretly.
We saw exactly this play out in real time with Dr. Li Wenliang during the initial outbreak of COVID in Wuhan. The instinct wasn't to warn the public. The instinct was to force the doctor to sign a confession for spreading rumors.
Exactly. Or look at the Hainan floods a few years ago, or the recent Guangxi Dam failures. The immediate response is censorship. Or look historically at the Bankyo Dam disaster in 1975, where over 200,000 people died.
Oh, that was horrific.
The regime covered up the scale of that disaster for decades. The mechanical design of the system is to protect the image of leadership first and human life second.
So for any of our listeners who might have family in that region or who travel there, what are the actual survival tips? How do you know when to run if the government won't tell you?
You have to look for the negative space. You have to look for what isn't there. If public meteorological data or the official water level updates for the reservoir suddenly go offline or stop updating during a heavy rain event, that is a massive red flag.
Okay, watch the data flow.
Secondly, if you see a sudden, massive spike in social media censorship regarding the weather, combined with official state media suddenly shouting at the top of their lungs, "The dam is perfectly safe, do not spread rumors,"
Then you know.
that is your signal. Do not wait for an official evacuation order. Pack your bags and get to high ground immediately.
Wow. That is such a heavy but necessary reality check. And really, it ties this entire deep dive together perfectly. Whether we are looking at a localized family argument over national identity and passports, or a multi-million-dollar fake city built in the Mongolian desert, or heavily cooked economic books in an auto manufacturing hub, or a massive concrete leviathan held together by chemical glue and censorship.
It all connects.
It does. The common thread is clear. It is the inherent danger of authoritarian systems prioritizing their own political survival and face over objective reality and human life.
That is exactly the through line. And it leaves us with a really important, final, provocative thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
We spend so much time in policy circles and in the news worrying about the hard power of authoritarian regimes. We count their missiles, we measure the tonnage of their ships, we look at the sheer scale of their dams.
Right, the physical stuff.
But the greatest vulnerability of these systems isn't a weakness in their concrete or their steel. The ultimate vulnerability is the fact that no one inside that system is allowed to tell the truth. In a system that is entirely built on lies, the truth isn't just an inconvenience, it is a structural threat. It is the one thing the system cannot absorb.
That is so true.
So as you navigate your own conversations, whether at the dinner table or online, remember that protecting a democratic system, a system where you are actually allowed to disagree, to point out flaws, and to speak the truth without fear, is the ultimate defense mechanism.
I think that is the perfect note to end on. A reminder that our messiness, our loud arguments, our ability to complain and vote, that is our armor, not our weakness. Well, Sip and Talkers, that brings us to the end of a very deep, very intense journey today.
It was a big one.
It was. If you enjoyed us breaking down the logic, the geopolitics, and the engineering myths, please make sure you subscribe to Sip and Talk wherever you get your audio. Leave us a review. It really helps the show.
And we also want to give a very warm shout out to a good friend of the show, Mickey.
Yes. Everyone, please go check out his YouTube channel, Mickey to Life. He just dropped a brand new travel vlog that is absolutely fantastic.
It's a great palate cleanser after all this heavy geopolitical talk.
It really is. So go give him a watch and a subscribe. Until next time, keep sipping, keep talking, and stay curious. We'll see you in the next deep dive.